Anderson. Nile Anderson is our own Rhodes Scholar. What is a Rhodes Scholar? Well, the Rhodes Scholarship was established in 1902 by Cecil Rhodes and funds students to study at the University of Oxford in England. Who can become a Rhodes Scholar? Outstanding academic achievements, leadership ability, character and integrity, commitment to service, potential to make a positive impact in the world. That's who Nile Anderson is. Let's meet him. And as always, like, subscribe, and send to a friend. Yeah, like and subscribe and send to a friend. See me on the other side. Hi, this is Roger Smith of the True Blue Lounge, and today I have a 2014 graduate, Nile Anderson. Nile's a Rhodes Scholar. Hey, Nile, how's it going?
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks. It's an
Good,
honor to
good.
be here.
I'm so glad that you've taken the time so that Roger can ask you his questions in his way, you know. So I'm really grateful for you to, bless the platform, so to speak.
That's all right.
All right. So, Niall, what part of the country are you from?
It's that's a hard question always when people ask me. So I was really born in St. Anne's Bay Hospital, and that's where most of my mom's family is from. But I spent most of my life, of course, in Westmoreland. So that is where everything happened. My whole life is basically there.
What part of Westmoreland? I need to know right to the bamboo tree or
Right.
the coconut tree, you know?
So I mean, so originally the place I've known from when I was a child was Savannah Lamar, particularly on Louis Street. I
Okay.
lived in the teachers' cottages right next to Mannings. So that should be something that a lot of the viewers should be very familiar with. That
Yes,
region
yes.
right next to the farm.
All right, that's cool. That's cool. No, I didn't know you lived so close. Okay, so your mom was a teacher or
Yeah,
headmistress.
yeah.
Okay,
She was a teacher. She was a teacher, yeah.
okay. So tell me a little bit about early Nile. What primary school did you go to,
So I went to Savannah Lamar Primary School.
and how did you get to
Yeah.
school in the mornings?
It's a funny story. Remember. So what I do remember, at Sub Infant, I think so I started at Sub Infant, what loving care, then Sub Infant, then Sub Primary, and there's a funny story behind that. I remember I used to be taken there, and then I remember there was one particular morning where they left me by myself, and I was right there at around I think Inting, and I was just there crying. I had no idea where I was. I was just lost. But the whole time, apparently, my mom was close by, just watching. And I think it was, I don't even remember. I think it was actually Miss Wagstaff, if you remember her, that actually
Yes.
came to my aid and said, "Let me show you where to go." It was just the funniest thing. But ever since then, like, I've known myself to be walking to school and back.
Wow, wow. Well, it's amazing what we got up to when we were, younger. Yep, yep, yep.
Mhm.
So, So I need you to humor me because I'm going to ask you some questions,
Yeah.
just to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
So are you a Mac or a Windows kind of person?
Windows. I've grown up with Windows my whole life. It's not necessarily like a Mac hate, but
Hmm.
it's just I've grown up with Windows and that's why I'm used to all the shortcuts and so on. It's just a very foreign place when I'm using a Mac machine.
Okay. Um, as far as your cell phone's concerned, what are you rocking? iPhone, iOS, or Android, Samsung?
Nah, I'm not on the iPhone side quite yet. I'm rocking an Android.
Okay,
So I like
okay.
iPhones because I like iPhones because of the picture quality. I'll admit, but that's also like why I got a Pixel. So
Okay,
trade off.
nice. And if you were to use one of those AI agents, Grok, Copilot, Google, what's your number one?
That's an interesting question. I think that's gonna be biased because so normally my number one would be Chat GPT, but then so one of my friends, so a Jamaican I met up here while going to school, he actually sponsored me a Claude subscription, and so I've been using Claude for the fact that I'm allowed to use projects on the subscription mode, which makes it easier to like keep up project memory and just coming back and the chat having all the context that I need. So it's Claude is the most frequently used right now, but it's not necessarily because I've assessed all of them and said, all right, this is the best one. It's just the one I have the most access to right now.
Okay, okay. Do you do you ask different agents the same prompt just to see what the outcome would be?
Not not intently. Like I'll what I'll do if I have a genuine question, like something like I'm genuinely curious about or I need to find out, then I'll run it through all of them and kind of see what it returns. But for the purpose of like being comparative and saying, all right, I think this is more so closer to the truth or the final thing that I'd like to really present.
Okay, okay, cool. Um, what was it like going to Manning school when your mother is part of the institution?
That is it's a very interesting question. I remember, oh dear, um, where to start? It was interesting. To be honest with you, like, I mean, outwardly, and I'll talk a bit more about that later, babbling, but outwardly, I was not necessarily a child that misbehaved a lot. So I didn't necessarily get into much problems. I remember, though, particularly in first form, in seventh grade, I recall I was talking, right? So my mom and Miss Corinne Smalling, I don't know if you were there, that or if you know of her, but Miss Corinne Smalling, they're very close, right? And so there was an occasion where I was speaking in Miss Smalling's class to one of my classmates. It was nothing good either. And so now in retrospect, I completely deserved what I got. But I was talking to my classmate while we were reading the book, and she noticed. And so she not only spoke to me, she went and she reported it to my mom, that very naturally and understandably. And my mom didn't let it rest until I got home. My mom came down right there on the first one block, right at one rose, and came and said, "What did I hear you were doing?" And took a book and
Wow.
yes, it's right. I was like, "Yo, man."
In front of other
They were
kids?
right, right there. And from that day, I remember there was even so one of my friends, Dylan Williams, that was also in one rose. Dylan had this song that he made because of that event. He was like, "Now don't worry, now don't fret, Miss Berry gone here what you forget." And
Oh
like,
man.
yeah. So ever since that day, but yeah, I mean apart from that, like nothing necessarily um remarkable per se. It's just that it's an interesting dynamic in terms of like when school is over, it's not really over. You don't necessarily head home. You just like I come to my mom's office and wait a bit, or when I'm looking for her, it's just yeah, it's just that dynamic of like and the people that you would see and call like for example, I call Miss Smalling Auntie Corinne. Like no, she's Miss Smalling when I come to class.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic there, but yeah,
So were you always relatively smart?
I don't know how to put that. I don't know how to answer that. So like, um, in truth and in fact, I would never ever have labeled myself as a smart child. Like I
What
remember,
about primary
like
school?
I, let me. So, all right, when I started primary school, right, I don't think I was reading it. I was not. Then I was definitely not reading up to grade level. I remember particularly it was the intervention of one of my teachers, Miss Mary, that really took me up to the reading level that I was supposed to be in grade two. And so I was behind the class. I think they even wanted. So I was,
Playing from Rogers
there are
Equipment.
streams. I was in one of the lower streams of class. So like there's 1x3, 1x2, 1x1. So they put me in 1x2 and I think my mom was mentioning that they wanted to put me lower as well. I don't know how true that is. I don't recall the complete accuracy of the statement. But they put me in one of the lower streams because I was just not on par. And I remember going into 2x2. Miss Mary was my teacher, and she was the one who actually like spent some time with me. I remember she even encouraged me to join Boy Scouts and so on, and like just different things. And over time, like I started reaching up to the grade level I was supposed to be, and then after that, I managed to get into 3x1, which is one of the highest streams. But again, I was never necessarily considered like one of the brilliant students per se. So it was really like new developments when I started to do or achieve things, and praise the Lord for that. But yeah, I've always struggled, and even though it's interesting, like I tell people that I still struggle. I don't like I see people perform in such ways and so easily and so smoothly, like they're able to execute these tasks, but it's not necessarily the easiest for me. Um, but yeah, I would describe it that like over time, like the commitment of people around me, and I guess like the drive that the Lord has put in me, eventually put me in that space where I managed to excel. But yeah, it's not by my own doing at all.
Okay, we're going to get into the Lord thing in a little bit. Um, if someone's cooking you your most favorite meal, what is it?
It has to be spaghetti, and well, you could say it could be spaghetti bolognese, or it could be spaghetti and meatballs. But like just spaghetti and like anything that is pasta, anything that is Italian inspired, in that same sense, like I absolutely love that.
Wow. How long have you been out of Jamaica?
I've been out to Jamaica for just over a year. So I left September 2024. So now it would be going 1 year and 3 months now.
And you're in England, yeah?
Yes, I'm in England.
And
Yeah.
spag bol, which is short for spaghetti bolognese, is your go-to meal just after a year. Boy, oh boy. So
No,
what's your Jamaican food of choice?
no, so I mean, that's the thing. From I've been in Jamaica, I've always loved spaghetti.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not a conversion thing. I'm not being converted up here to love it. But yeah, I guess also like in Jamaica, like to be honest, like I guess as people put it, I'm a foodie. So like any food you give me, as long as it tastes good, I'll have it. I think one thing that probably stands out to my palate right now, like thinking about it, is something like a dumpling and like a boiled dumpling and an ackee and saltfish. Yeah,
Okay.
like yeah, like I would come to Jamaica right now. I'd pay the air ticket. I'd be willing to pay the air ticket
Nice.
just to probably come back and taste some of that baby.
Okay, okay. Cool. So I want to ask you what you ate at lunch because you probably had to go home and eat it, or were you able to go up on the street and hold a patty and cocoa bread like the rest of the students?
No, what? Hold on. As in, sorry. When are
Mannings,
you talking about?
Mannings.
Oh, Mannings. Okay, okay. Um, this is interesting. Going on the street. No, that was not a thing. I didn't have that permission. So, I mean, technically, I had
Even as a
access.
fourth former, you didn't have that permission.
No. So like I had access to the flats and like so that's as far as it would go. I would go to the flats and I'd probably get something, prepare something and eat it from there. But in terms of like going much further on the road, like my friends even like had this joke, like they were so normally whenever they were leaving the school compound, like I'd stop right at the gate and it was almost like there was a invisible barrier there. So even in the evenings I didn't necessarily cross that barrier. But on the daily to answer the question, what I would eat for lunch is, yeah, I'd say, well, I was gonna say patty and cocoa bread, but to be honest, that was an earlier thing. When I truly remembered myself like going and intentionally buying lunch for myself, it was always bun and cheese and a box juice
Right.
or some fruity juice. It was bun and cheese. Yeah.
Have you ever had dry bread and cheese?
Yeah.
Peg
Not,
bread? No.
no,
Hot bread? No.
I mean, so there was a new thing called cheese bread that came out. I tried
Okay.
that for a while,
Hmm.
but yeah, not necessarily intently on my own per se.
Okay. 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 All right. So, my favorite question I like to ask people is if they're religious and how has religion helped them in their life. So, let me know about it.
Right. I mean, this is a big part of my story. I mean, I think it's a big part of anybody's story. Um, I think Jesus Christ and Him being risen is the most important thing that I've come to know. Like, of all the knowledge in this world, of everything I've learned, of everything that I've achieved, I think the most important thing to me is the relationship and the salvation that I have through Jesus Christ and the salvation that He offers the world as well. So yeah, religion is a big thing for me, but I won't. I don't even like to use the word religion because it turns off a lot of people in terms of like they start to think I'm describing things that like are just like made up stories versus like something with high historicity. And so I normally like put it as it's a relationship. I've come into relationship with the Lord through His Son Jesus Christ, which He has offered for that exact purpose. That I could be cleansed of sin, that I could have new life in Him. And so it's the most fundamental thing to who I am right now. And yeah, a lot of things have fundamentally shifted in who I am even just because of that reality. Yeah, and like even for example, like anxiety, depression, I used to struggle with those. Not to say like there aren't days where like I'm not tempted to like go back into that darkness, but because of him, like I can have the light and I can see through those things now. Like it's no longer holding me down or holding me back from the purpose that he set on my life. So praise the Lord Jesus for that.
So, do you ever doubt your faith?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I, I think I think everyone has doubts. Um, I think, and there's even an account in the Bible where a man. I don't think the Lord despises that either. There's an account of a man who came to Jesus and he says, "If you can heal, would you heal?" And essentially, Jesus' response is, "If I can, he definitely can." And the man's response is like, "I do believe, like, help my unbelief." So I believe that doubt and faith can coexist, but fundamentally, I think the most important fact about my faith is, did this Jesus Christ live? And did he die? Did he rise again? And if that's a fact, then no matter how I feel on a particular day, right? No matter what somebody tries to present me on a particular day, the fact remains. And it's on that fact that my faith is definitely based. And I would say that always fundamentally stands, even when I have doubts, when I have challenges, when I'm reading the Bible and I find it hard. Eventually, I find like I do manage to overcome that, and I just realize this is just something transient, and yeah,
So, let me dig a little bit with you then. So, do you think this relationship you have, Jesus has with everybody, all 9 billion of us?
I believe it's like so. We're all born into a family, right? We're born into a family, and so we naturally have that relationship of being born into a family. Like you don't pick who your mom is, you don't pick who your father is, right? And that's just the reality of the situation. You do choose a wife, or if you're a woman, you choose a husband, right? But ultimately, it's the same here. It's not necessarily like a family. I guess the correlation here, or just extending on the imagery here, would be the family would be like the fact that you are created in the image of God. However, we've corrupted that image through sin, right? And we all have sinned and we all battle with that. But nobody can deny that they haven't lied, they haven't stolen, they haven't been bitter towards somebody, they haven't hated somebody. They can't deny that, right? And so we're created beings. However, in terms of that relationship is something that you ultimately choose for yourself. It's something that you're given the choice. I remember Joshua was told, Joshua challenged and said, "Choose ye today whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." So we see throughout the Bible and the biblical context where a relationship with the Lord, a relationship with the things that are good through the Lord, is a chosen relationship. So it's not something that, yeah, it's just automatic, right? So yeah,
You know, so you've spent a lot of time studying the Bible and stuff, yeah?
I try to, but I must admit also I am a new Christian, so like this happened like 2.5 years ago. But yeah,
Oh,
I try.
but when you were in Jamaica as a youngster, you used to go to church every day, though. Every
I
weekend, no?
used to, yeah, I used to go to church, but yeah, I realized.
How many days a week in Jamaica?
I mean, initially it was just really just the Sunday. Like at one point when I was old, I started going at youth fellowship and events related to that, so maybe 2 times a week. But the point
What
is,
about family training hour? No.
no,
Prior
hmm?
meeting. I'm trying to see if
No,
it got up to 4 days a week. No.
not in, definitely not in Jamaica, not at that time. Because as I said, like the fact hadn't really affected me, and so it really had not shaped my life. Like I guess those were indicators and signs as well that I had not had a true relationship with the Lord.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. So, give me a sense of your transition from high school to where you are now. What happened in your life?
That's a good question, and yeah, so it even allows me to speak about like my finding of faith. So initially, I finished high school. Yeah, did sixth form. All right, let me start here. So I finished fifth form, and I finished, as a lot of people know, with 19 C6 subjects. And so now it was a whole thing where people had this high hope on me that this young man would have a very bright future. And so the expectations were high, very high, palpably so. And when I went to sixth form now, I was like, all right, I have to meet these expectations. I then remember that historically, for the first time ever,
By the way, sorry, you said
yeah,
19 subjects?
19, yes, 19
Teen,
C6 subjects.
19.
Yeah, 15 ones and four twos, to be
Wow.
clear, I guess.
Wow, wow, wow. I just wanted to make sure I heard that right. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, so when that was done, right? People had this high expectation on the trajectory of my academic career, and I was like, this is a lot to bear. It got worse when we made history as being the first school, or one of the first schools in a long time, to have two matriculants in a row. And that's to top matriculant to the University of the West Indies. Essentially, this is somebody who has reached the University of the West Indies as the most qualified based on their criteria. And so that year, it was first Shaquille Dias that got it. He left sixth form in 2014. Then Georgina White left sixth form in 2015. He got it. And I know there was this big expectation at the start of the year. Okay, they've got it. So can we pull out a hat trick? Can we get a third? And naturally, people were looking at me. I remember even one morning at the devotion, I remember it was being announced, this news was being announced, and Steve Gordon, the principal then, he was like, I'm wondering if we can get a third. And he walked over to my seat, standing right over me. And I was like, this,
Pile on the
this
pressure a
is
little bit, you know?
it was a lot. And so I remember, like at the time, so I know it was out of my interest, my welfare. I remember I got a lot of pushback in terms of like how many C6 subjects I was doing, and they were very worried about my mental health regarding that. And then it did not help when I came now to Cape and said that this was the amount that I wanted to do. So initially I did seven, and then didn't work out as well. I got like five ones, two twos, and I'm like, oh man, this is not enough to achieve the goal that I need to achieve. Then in the second year, I was like, all right, I'm gonna take on nine Cape subjects, nine Cape units, and see the best that I can do. And praise the Lord, I got eight ones and one two, and it was just enough to actually be considered for the top matriculant for that year. And so I entered the University of the West Indies as a top matriculant to the university. Praise the Lord. However, here's the interesting thing. The program that I was in at the time was the MBBS program. And that was the program that I started in. That was the program that many people had the hope that they'd see Dr. Nile and this and graduate from in the next 5 years. However, the truth is, when I went there, I struggled a lot. I had very much many challenges with the program. It was just not, it didn't feel natural. It didn't necessarily feel it didn't feel right. Or more so, let me say, something didn't feel right about the whole thing. And so I continued through struggling a bit, and eventually, yeah, I just thought I've had enough of this. I am going to transfer to my true love of electronics engineering. And I did. And things were going well initially, right? I remember I mentioned the other day, like my first semester, I got like four A pluses and one A because I was like so determined to show them that this is my program and this is where I belong, guys. This is where I always belong. Um, yeah, praise Jesus for that. But then it just deteriorated after that. It completely deteriorated. Like the experience, I remember it was also after shortly after that, like COVID came, and things were the worst they've ever been. Like I faced anxiety and depression in medicine, but no, this was an all new level. I remember facing anxiety to the point where it was crippling. Like I froze during a mid semester exam once. Like I was trying to write and like my heart just like I was like I don't know what to do. Like, I can't. And yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, and I struggled on. I took actually so it's a 3 year program. I had to take a gap year. I took a complete gap year and restarted. So it took me 4 years to complete that 3 year program. So that means that I spent 7 years at the University of the West Indies, 7 years at the University of the West Indies, in order to complete a degree. But what really pivoted, what really changed along that way was I found Jesus. I remember one of the times I was struggling, and one of the students that were in the lower class, because I was now in class with them since I took the gap year, Gawain Wright, he invited me to church, and yeah, his sister drove us there. And I remember I went there and I was like, this is a usual thing. I usually go to church and so on. Like, what's new? There's nothing different here. And I remember that I spoke to the pastor afterwards and like some of the other brothers there, Raman Hunter, for example. And one of the things that they challenged me on was what does it you say you're a Christian? What does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to be saved? How does one know that they're saved? And I'm like, obvious. Well, not literally, but like this was the sentiment. It was like obvious. It's just do good things. That was the best answer I had, or something along that line. To be honest with you, I don't remember exactly what I answered on that day, and that's very telling. But they said, no, it's not that. And so they challenged me to go read in the Bible myself, which is not something I necessarily did much. They challenged me to go read First John, if ever, by the way. They challenged me to go read First John, Second John, and Third John. Come back and tell them everywhere where it says born of God, which is basically the temperature indicator to tell, yeah, are you truly of Christ? Do you truly know Christ? Are you just saying you know Christ or claiming you know Christ? And yeah, obviously, I looked at the things and I started to realize, yeah, I don't really know the Lord. And eventually, there was a call for those who wanted to recommit their lives to Christ. And I stood up for that call. That was around February, March of the next year after going initially in October then. And yeah, I stood up. My life changed entirely from there. I remember now, like through the church, I had discipleship through the pastor and like some other brothers there. Like yeah, like thank the Lord for like Keith and Sean, Christopher Durrell, Simoy, like all of these men now like started to pour into my life. And I will, of course, Dion Thomas himself who's the pastor. And they started to pour into my life. And at the time, all that really mattered to me was I had a moral problem and I had not dealt with that. And now I was just, yeah, I was dealing with a lot of the consequences. But at the same time, I felt free. Like I felt different. Like the same things that were holding me down were no longer holding me down. The depression, anxiety that was gone now was just really thinking like, all right, now that I know this fact, what do I do with it? The fact I know that Jesus Christ came to die for me, what do I do with this now? And so like I set up my life like trying to serve, join the evangelism team, join the drama team, just trying to minister the gospel of Christ. And yeah, I remember after that now, my pastor, he's an author as well and he has a series called the 21 Day Series. And one of the books he wrote was 21 Days to Knowing God's Purpose. And that, along with 21 Days to Sexual Purity. I remember those books stood out to me. Like I read it during a period. I remember dedicating to read the 21 days, the knowing God, before applying for the Rhodes Scholarship. I remember that was one of the things that I committed to because I wanted to know that indeed that this was the direction that he was taking me. And there's more of a story behind the Rhodes Scholarship itself as well, and even the transition from engineering. But the point is, I read this book now. I read this book, and when I read this book, I was like, yeah, this feels like it's the direction. I wrote all my things inspired by the scripture that was said in that and the prayers that I really went through and like thought upon like where's the Lord leading me. And I mean, the rest of the story, as you know, I eventually got the Rhodes Scholarship here and praise the Lord Jesus. Like, yeah, there is nothing I value more now in anything I do, or there's nothing more priority to me than sharing the gospel of Christ. I mean, especially after those experiences, I believe that this is a blessing, and from this blessing, a desire to glorify Him.
Wow. Wow. So, if I was to look at your path, I am thinking back when you use the word depression and anxiety. I'm thinking that Nile was under much more pressure, and the fact that he had good grades put him under so much personal pressure that he nearly broke. Is that right?
Um, I would say that's a contributing factor, but I think there is definitely much more in terms of like I think yeah. And then I would say it's like a lot of experiences building up to that. Because I mean, for example, so to show you that it was multifactorial. So one of my shoulders, right, it sits higher on my back than the other. So I have something called spinal deformity. So from I've been a kid, right, and it doesn't help that my feet are, what's this called? They're turned in. So when I was a kid, I remember that I would constantly, I'd be mocked as a kid, and
And you
there
know,
would be
Jamaica,
something.
is it? I was about to say Jamaican kids are cruel, but guess what? Kids are cruel, period, you know? So,
Mm, shows you that indeed, um, all our sin and fathers like glory God. We see that indeed in the pattern with kids. But yeah, so I went through that. I went through that, and that I think I dealt with a lot of insecurities. Consequently, naturally, um, I didn't find where. I mean, I was even thinking about it last night. Up until a certain age, I didn't really consider much of my friendships like really solid friendships. I really questioned the value in all of them, just because of these experiences. Not necessarily saying the people themselves were the problem, but it's just how I view the world because of that. I think, and yeah, I mean, ultimately as well, like I realized that also most fundamentally, I also had like a sin problem in terms of like there are a lot of things I was holding on to. I was holding on to like a lot of bitterness in my heart. Um, I was holding on to like just just like covetousness. Like I was looking at people and thinking, oh man, I want to be that. Or just looking at people and thinking, I'll never forgive this person. Or like not necessarily in those exact words or like that exact thought, but that was what was going on in my heart. Like people are seeing like on the outside like a jovial, happy go person, right? But on the inside, I was rotting away. I was just like I had so much anger, so much hate, so much
you
bitterness
know,
building inside me.
Niall, just hearing this from you is like kind of real shocking. Let me ask you this. Did you play sports at all at school?
No, not no, definitely not formally. Because I mean, I didn't have the most kinesthetic intelligence because, like, I guess, like, my body anatomy was a bit off. So it kind of even from the get go, like, even if there was an opportunity, like, I just said, like, I don't think I can just because, like,
Right, right.
things are a bit off. But I mean, eventually I got more into it. Well, one of my favorite hobbies now is football. We can talk a bit more about that later.
Who do you support?
But yeah,
Because you're in England now. Who do you support?
that's a funny thing. I'm a boaty. I jump ship anywhere where Lionel Messi is. I was
Oh,
just
no,
a
no.
Messi fan, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just like play. I
I would
like play.
never support Lionel Messi ever, ever. If you are a great soccer player, you have to play in the British Premiership. If you don't play in the British Premiership, we haven't touched you yet. You know what I mean? We don't know what you're like under pressure.
No, but that's what they said about World Cup as well. The highest stage of football. And bless the Lord, he won. But nonetheless, I mean, personally, I'd like Cristiano Ronaldo to see a World Cup as well. To be honest, so it's
He
not like for
deserves
me,
one
it's not
because
like
he's had 2 stints at Man United. He deserves it. You know.
just because.
Yeah, just because, just because. So have you had a job yet?
Yeah. So I yeah. So that's a funny story. That's a testimony in itself as well. So I was wrapping up my dissertation in October. And in wrapping up my dissertation in October, it was the most challenging experience ever. I've never done research to this extent before. And I remember just being worried about like everything I had. I remember I was not, I, I remember I was getting wrong experimental results and realizing, oh, wait, the code base and what they've instructed me to do in the code base is entirely wrong. And I need to fix all of my results in the like last week or two. And yes, I was going through like a lot of difficulty there, like having to produce 10,000 words after fixing all of those things. And I remember getting a call back for an interview to a job I applied for. And I was like, that's interesting. I didn't expect that. And it was the same Wednesday that that week that my dissertation was due on the Friday. And so I was still working at the dissertation because like no everything was going down to the wire because again I had to fix those kinks before even thinking about writing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the interview like really tired, not very prepared at all. And like I tried my best. Like I remember they giving me a code and so on, and it's like I was like they're like, what else? What else is there to fix? And I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I have no more. And I remember leaving that interview thinking that was the worst interview I've ever done. I left the hospital just thinking. So yeah, it was no the research building just thinking, like, oh man, that interview was horrible. Just staring out into the street and thinking, that was bad. But nonetheless, like I said, I have to recover and I have to go back and continue working on my dissertation. But it was hard, like even just like sitting down to write again. I'm like, that interview was really bad. But bless the Lord Jesus, like on the Friday that I finished my dissertation, right? They actually called me, not called me, they emailed me, the potential supervisor emailed me, and he said, um, we're happy you joined the interview. And listen, like when I was reading this, I thought it was reading like a rejection email. You know those nice rejection emails they'll send you and say like, yeah man, thank you for your time. Unfortunately, we decided to go with another candidate. So every line I was reading, it was reading like that initially. I was
Right.
like, all right, wow, they're really nice about this rejection, but all right, let me just accept it. And then eventually it turned out that indeed I was accepted into the role. And so now, bless the Lord Jesus, I'm working as a software engineer for the computational health informatics lab at the University of Oxford.
Okay, okay. Oxford as
Yeah,
well. Nice, nice.
yeah.
What's the town of Oxford like?
It's it's unique. It's interesting. So I think the most unique thing is preservation and history. So it's like the
Mm-hmm.
buildings are literally it would be a glimpse into the historical times.
Mm-hmm.
So on the outside, what you see is just like pure history, at least in the city center. And it's just also interesting like having that dynamic with electric buses just passing by like these really old buildings, these electric buses, and then how they've renovated inside to be modern. It's like it's, it's, it's this interesting parallel. And so like I also went to like Oxford Brookes University,
Mm-hmm.
which is the other university on the hill, so not Oxford Uni yet. But when whenever like I came between the two, it was just like this big contrast because like Oxford Brookes is just like this modern university, and then like you just go into the relics
Mm-hmm.
of the Oxford Uni in the city center. It's been an interesting experience. A lot of sights to see. It's the place where they filmed Harry Potter and all these things. So like you have those kind of sites and so on. So it's like it's full of history and also like full of Christian history as well. So that was also interesting. That I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know all these things before I came here, but like realizing that like some major martyrs and like people like C.S. Lewis and so on, like big defenders of the faith, they've been through this place. And I'm like, wow, that's really interesting.
And now they have Nile.
Crazy.
So Nile, do you drink beer?
Hmm?
Do you drink beer?
No, I do not. I do not. I've from I was a young child, even before being a Christian, and even more so now, I have committed that I would not drink. So I don't drink.
Okay. No alcoholic beverages for now.
No, not on purpose. The last time I drank alcohol was when, well, well. I mean, there's one of my churches I attended. Like they gave us like it was
Grape.
alcoholic wine,
You
but
sure it's alcoholic and it wasn't grape? A grape them normally give out them
nah,
church, you know.
that some of them still give out alcoholic wine. So I remember one of the churches I went to was alcoholic wine, but that those are the only circumstances under which like I'll have it. And maybe like sometimes in the past, like Christmas cake, and I mean not so much more sorrel now. Like I literally ask for the sorrel without the alcohol. So yeah, I stay away from it essentially.
What about Guinness punch?
Nothing, nothing. The only thing we drink, box juice, bigger, soda, and all everything here. We don't go
Have
near
you got
that.
any vices?
I mean, no. Like, so I wouldn't say I have vices. I mean, I'd say I have things I struggle with, but that's the thing I label it as struggling with. I don't have anything that I like try to go to and so on. Like for example, like I would normally eat like a lot of sugary treats when I was stressed and so on. As an example, but then when I realized that I'm kind of doing this more than relying or praying to the Lord about the situation, like I kind of tried to cut it out. So like I remember like even the other day, like one of my favorite sweets ever, Haribo Fantastics. Like one of my friends brought home a box of it, and I just looked at it the entire time, and I'm like, I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that at all. Yes, I really tried to cut out those things out of my life as much as possible. Yeah,
Video games?
that I used to play video games like crazy, but unfortunately, like when things got really busy, maybe not unfortunately, like things got really busy, and so like I play much less. I don't think I've seen a video game in a while. I've been there was a time I had like a longing to go back to it, but I used to play it a lot as a kid, but not now, definitely.
Boy,
Well,
Nile,
sorry, one
go on.
second, sorry,
Yeah.
let me be honest. Well, not so much here now because I've not had access to it. But when I was at UWI, definitely anywhere there was FIFA, you would find Nile.
Okay,
Anywhere
cool,
there's
cool. I
FIFA.
play now. I play FC 26 regularly now because FIFA is now FC.
FC,
So no,
I saw that.
we like the same games. Okay. All right. So no alcohol. So maybe church and prayer is your vice.
I would call it a vice. I definitely would call it a vice because then vice has a very negative connotation, and
Oh
furthermore,
no,
it's like,
oh no, oh no. A vice is something to balance you. You know, some people need a little methamphetamine, some need a little weed, some need a little this. Some people, if they now fight and argue, they don't feel well. You know, everybody needs a little bit. You don't agree?
well, I would say it's my I wouldn't say vice. I would say it's my comfort, and praise be to the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we may comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from Him. So praise the Lord Jesus for that. But comfort, not I wouldn't call it a vice, nonetheless. Just by the fact that it would be categorized with some of those other things.
Nice. Hey, you know, when I hear you support the faith, it makes it warms my heart even more to know that a guy like you still, you know, thinks on a different dimension, you know. So it's just great to show it takes all kinds to make a world. You know what I mean?
Praise the Lord Jesus. Yeah.
No, most definitely, most definitely. So, Niall, when we die, what do you think happens to us?
Well, I think so. Like, I think if you're a believer, I think you definitely join the Lord in glory. That's definitely what I think, and I'm convinced of. And the evidence for that is the fact that 500 people witnessed Jesus Christ risen again. And so I think that's definitely very telling that what he said was indeed fact, and he himself told us what would happen when he died. And yeah, that is we join the Lord in glory. And ultimately, there's a time for a man to die, and then a time for judgment. So all will be judged one day, and I believe that's coming for all people. And unfortunately, those who have not accepted Christ. And that's why I really try to share this as much as possible, share my faith as much as possible. But those who have not accepted Christ will simply spend eternity away from God. And yeah, and yeah, that's just it.
Well, that's going to be me because I haven't accepted yet, So just letting full disclosure. So tell me, this 500 people that have risen.
No,
Why do
not
you?
reason.
No,
700
sorry.
people
That
witness,
that witness the resurrection.
right?
What makes you believe that story?
Okay, so this is interesting. So one of the persons who wrote about this account of the 500 eyewitnesses is indeed Paul in the letter to the Corinthians. Now, what's very interesting about Paul is very factual, and you can check as much sources as you'd like. Paul himself was opposed to Christianity. Paul was actually supporting and endorsing the killing of Christians. He was there when Stephen, the first martyr, was killed, holding the I think the quotes, maybe my translation is a bit bad there. Was basically holding on to the quotes of the people that were stoning Stephen. So he was fully endorsing this. And when he met the risen Christ, when he met Jesus Christ, right, was on his way to Damascus to persecute more Christians, right? And he called Paul, no, well, not Paul at the time, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And like that was a defining moment. He literally met Jesus Christ. And this man was hell bent, quite literally, on killing Christians. This man's life was transformed by Jesus Christ. And this man decided he would follow Jesus Christ even to death, even to death. And I would say, having that person as one of the eyewitnesses of Jesus and the risen Jesus Christ, I would say that's very, very much telling that this has to be a fact. That there's no one that would literally just completely switch sides to even death for something they didn't truly believe, something they didn't truly experience. And he's not the only person. Many of the other apostles went on to die for what they believed in. And I mean, people have this theory, some strange theories out there, and they say, oh, maybe like group hallucinations. Psychologists have this, I mean, a lot of psychologists have spoken against the viability of such a claim. And every other claim that they make out there, it's like them just trying to find an excuse. In fact, in John 3, so you've heard John 3, verse 16, says,
Yes.
for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. So whoever believeth in him shall not perish but have eternal life. That's beautiful. That's the gospel in summary, right? However, there's more in that chapter, right? There's more in that chapter that's very telling to us as to why is it that people don't accept Christ, right? It says to us in John 3:19 to 20, this is the verdict, right? Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. I remember there was one particular evangelist, Cliff Connector, right? He does a lot of evangelism with his son online. And he said that he was arguing with his roommate one night, and it would just be like an ongoing thing. They'd argue, they'd go at it night after night after night. And then he said, like, is it that you don't believe the facts that I'm giving you? Is it that this is not good enough evidence for you? Or is it that you present arguments just because if this is true, that would mean you'd have to change? And like, he was honest with him and he said, honestly, if it is true, the problem is that would mean like a lot for me. That I'd have to give up certain things, and that's not something he's alright with. And I feel like that's the same case with a lot of people. And they hold on to the things of this world, the sinfulness of this world, trying to find the joy in that when their true joy is in the Lord, but they try to find their joy in that, right? And they want to hold on to that, and as a result, they try to find every excuse, try to intellectualize their claims against Christ. But when you check the facts, if you check the facts yourself, then you realize that there is an astounding case for Christ. In fact, that there's a book, right, called Case for Christ, which is literally an investigative journalist. So Paul did it. So Paul had that experience way back then, right? um, near 2,000 years ago. And now here again, we find where somebody had a wife, right, who became a believer. They were neither were believers before, and the wife became a believer. He's an investigative journalist, and he started digging into the facts, trying to disprove his wife's faith. And the more he dug, the more he realized how true this was. He wrote a book about it. So that's very interesting that like people that truly investigate this, trying to disprove this, they come up with the one conclusion that this has to be true. And so I find that there are a lot of people that they live in that darkness. They desire to live in that darkness, and even more so, are to an extent darkness of knowledge. They want to remain ignorant of this because if this is true, then a lot would have to be changed. But what they don't realize is what Christ offers is much more. It's life and life abundant. But yeah, we're blinded.
That's very, very deep. Very deep. Very deep now. I have another question for you now. Um, so I believe that as humans we've evolved, and the fact that we don't have to, men in their roles don't have to kill animals and bring home, whether to the tribe or the family, to consume anymore, we're
Mm,
actually changing. So the fact that the job roles have changed over time, the fact that there's food in the supermarket, all you need is money to buy it. That means, man, woman, or child can go and get food if they have the money. To a stage now wherein we have AI doing the roles that even keep us focused on life. I believe the robots will take over and there will be no humans. What do you think about that?
That's very interesting. So, I mean, I guess for the purpose of the audience, so I actually studied a master's in AI, and my interest is in
Oh,
robotics.
did you? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I thought you did that. Yeah, man. So yeah, in terms of that, the viability of that. So, this has been something discussed from Asimov. Isaac Asimov, and like the originator of the fictional three laws about a robot not being able to do harm or the parameters upon which they can act. And yeah, I would say one of the main things right now that is driving innovation in the field, or one of the things that we have in mind, is definitely morality. In fact, what convinced me to spend a year at Oxford Brookes University was one of the professors here, Nigel Crooks, right? Sorry, Nigel Crook. Dr. Nigel Crook, he was working along that line. He actually had a book called, wow, I'm going to butcher the name here. Morality, machine morality. Essentially, it was on machine morality, and he made a convincing argument about just the idea of embedding moral principles into robotics, and particularly Christian moral principles. So that's what convinced me that he was also a Christian, and like thinking about, all right, how can we embed Ten Commandments in how these machines operate and perceive and interact with the world. Now, I would say we're building and designing ethically. That's one of the main research directions right now. And I'd say for it to come to the point where they take over the world, and for many reasons, I mean, firstly, just based on design, we're designing against that. And then furthermore, let's not even think about just the ethics behind it, or whether they can become ethical machines. But more so the actual ability. They won't necessarily have the ability to do as much as we think they'll have the ability to do. Like something like artificial super intelligence, where it's like beyond even like human intelligence. That's still very much a pipe dream, and even AGI, where it's near our own intelligence, that's still very much a pipe dream. And as I have said before, I think we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and I think therefore it will be a long time before humans can even mimic our exact brain processes. All the neuroscientists are still trying, all the computer science are still trying. And I don't think we'll ever truly get to that point where machines are able to completely outdo us without a need for human intervention. Like it can get minimal, and I think that's a curve. Like I think there's going to be a point at which the curve just kind of falls off.
Do you play chess?
I actually did. Yeah. So that was one of the main activities I did at Mannings.
Okay.
I was, so yeah.
Have you seen great grandmasters play AI in chess?
Yeah. So I mean, I haven't watched the videos myself, per se, but
Uh-huh.
like I remember, was it? Sorry, I'm trying to remember which company had made the breakthrough with this. I think it was IBM that designed a system
Hmm.
where essentially before it tried, right, but through I think RL methods, eventually it was able to come and beat the grandmaster that it was not able to beat before. And so yeah, they are able to quote unquote evolve in that sense, but that also is very much by design. You can clearly see the design behind that. And something like a chessboard, like yes, there are many possibilities, like beyond I think the innumerable stars in the sky,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, it is still very much more algorithmic than the world. It can be boiled down to an algorithm. And I believe that's the difference between robots operating in the real world and on specific tasks.
You know,
So it's that ability to generalize that I think we will not necessarily be able to achieve easily in machines.
Niall, it's important you say that, but I
Mhm.
read that there was a language that they taught the robot, and there was another sub language that the robot learnt that they didn't teach him, and those are the unknown things that are going around at the moment. Wherein, back in old programming days, whatever you programmed done what you said. This one now is a little bit smarter than its own good, and have some of the experts baffled with certain behaviors. Agreed or not?
So I mean, so I remember seeing that article, but I didn't go much into it because people said that indeed it was like highly exaggerated, and I think that's the thing with a lot of the media going around about
Hmm.
these technologies. I think there are a lot of things that there is truth to some of them, but they're very much highly exaggerated on purpose. They're trying or giving into sensationalism in their writing, and so
Hmm.
as a result, what we do get some facts, but again, it's a bit elevated more than the ground truth. And so even with that, so for example, you know how like a chatbot works? So how a chatbot works, like generative AI generally, is that it's all numbers and probability and statistics. So it's literally just all right, what's the probability of this thing being or this word? So if you said they, what's likely the then what's likely the next word? Maybe little, because maybe it's a story, the little boy. And then like over time as well, like it continues building based on what the most probable thing is next, right? So it's based on like past knowledge, you feed in that data. And so like a lot of the systems that we have now are very much data hungry. They require a lot of data in order to actually be viable. It says based on past data and them now being able to fit the puzzle pieces together based on, all right, this is historically the probability of these things coming together. And what you can do, like you can turn up or down something called the temperature, which essentially makes it throw in some wild cards a bit more often. So it's like, all right, the most probable word after the would have been little, but instead we're going to use the less probable word. We're going to say the mountain. And so it shifts that based on the temperature. And so like it's adjusting those little knobs and so on of those numbers that eventually leads to what seems to be intelligent output. But at the end of the day, it's all just numbers still.
Okay, well, I won't underestimate the power of quantum computers mixed with AI on steroids, because um, I don't see the growth is logarithmic, so um, because of that, I sit back and the wonders of this world are just playing out in front of us in my little mind. Wow. So, what do you do in your spare time? And if you're listening to secular Jamaican music, what artists are you listening to?
Ah, what do I do in my spare time? So it's funny. One of the things is listen music, and I would say like I listen right now. I only listen worship music, but I'll still answer that question. I'll answer that question. Um, but the main true thing that I do, and I realized it was really a thing. So I told you that anywhere there where there was FIFA, I would be there. But more so at UA, if there was a ball game, I had to be there, and that's what I do, as like for fun and on the side. Like I definitely play like a lot of football. I'm not good, definitely not good, no good whatsoever. In fact, but definitely very committed to the game anytime I'm playing, and absolutely love it. Like love playing. Like that's anywhere I am, I have to find a football game to play. So yeah, so praise Jesus that I found a few up here and with some good church brothers as well. But in terms of the secular music and what I would listen to, so there was a time. So the thing is, before I made the commitment to only listen to worship music and music about like the Christian work, I used to listen to a lot of music. In fact, I was like a big fan. Like I'd be that kind of person where so like even when I was playing school challenge quiz, like one of the things I wanted to do was music because it was like I loved music. I loved hearing all sorts of music. I'd listen to the Billboard Top 40 in the mornings while studying and so on. Um, I didn't necessarily listen as much dancehall per se, but when I did listen to dancehall, the songs that I would listen to were like songs at the time from people like Jamil and Version. So I think them call it culture. So I would listen to a lot of culture,
Okay.
um, like uplifting things, quote unquote. I mean, I kind of realize now that I kind of look at them now and say, all right, even things that I thought were uplifting are not necessarily so much so when you really examine it. But like I remember one of the songs that really stood out to me as well, and even though it's funny because I wasn't a Christian then, but Version sung this song called Mercy I Got. He was like, his song like he said, just the mercy I got, mercy I got, mercy I got. No, oh man, I got you. What is the mercy I got? And I remember that I'd go to my room, like on a hard day, and I just sing that song. But like those are the kind of songs that I listen to. But again, like no more. I've kind of gotten rid of like secular music out of my listening. Like I'll hear it from elsewhere, so on, but in terms of my own playlist right now, just pure worship music.
My last question for you is loaded. So, as a youngster going to the river, playing with a gig, stoning mango tree, and all of those sort of things, tie out goat, run down cow. Can you relate to any of that?
I mean, that's so much a gig. We never have gigging on my day. We never had gigs. But
Okay.
um, so where I was a very interesting place because remember, as I told you, I lived at the teacher's flats, so there weren't as many kids around. There wasn't necessarily like a river close by. But in terms of when I went to country, like in St. Ann, to visit family and so on, yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stone some mango tree. I would stone some mango trees, try get some mango. Would I go mango bush, all of them thing here. And yeah, from time to time, like my dad would make an effort to try to carry me to the river.
Mhm.
um yeah, when we started to develop a relationship. But yeah, so in terms of that, yeah, I try to remember what the other activities you say in terms of the other thing. Would I try play cricket with we call it again
Oh, coconut
banana
bark, coconut
shoots
bark.
shoot yeah, the coconut walk. With that, yeah. I mean, one time my grandma did they give me a well, never give me a goat. She tell me to go care for a goat and so on. I never necessarily go and tie him out. Tie
Mhm.
well, her out, but and nanny she didn't name. But yeah, but you have them like experiences there from time to time, particularly when we visit Saint Anne. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. And as a Rhodes Scholar, when you go back to Jamaica, or when you plan to go back to Jamaica, do you think you will work in Jamaica, or do you think now that you're abroad, you may broaden your horizons and pick up new skills?
Okay, so I think definitely the truth lies somewhere between those two in terms of there's definitely a big contribution that I want to come back to Jamaica and make. And that is not far removed, or in any means removed from the sharing of the gospel either. But one of the main things I want to do, so I've always had an interest for teaching. Well, I mean, I say always. I've developed an interest for teaching. And so I said I want to become a lecturer. And more as I realize that there are a lot of opportunities that are out here in the global world that we don't necessarily have the access to. More and more, I want to come back and bring those opportunities back to Jamaica and like mentor some young people and like just urge them on to like take up these opportunities and to excel in whatever God has put in their life, like whatever calling God has put on their life. And so that's one of the major things I want to do. So I definitely want to come back. I want to do some work with you for sure. If positions are available, definitely I am there. And in terms of broadening horizons, so definitely I if the opportunity presents, I was having this discussion with somebody the other day that one of the main things that you don't want to do as a lecturer or a teacher is not have true life experience to actually tie in when you're communicating ideas to the students. And so for me, I definitely want to see how much time I can spend like in some industry and seeing how I can bring back those ideas to really make whatever I teach or however I teach the students a bit more practical and for them to kind of see, all right, this is how what I'm using will be applied in the real world. So I think definitely I'm going to be pursuing opportunities to like see how much I can get into industry here or in other places. But ultimately, the aim is to contribute back to Jamaica and particularly to the education and mentorship of youths that are aspiring for, I mean, STEM to start with. In other places also, low person.
Did Mannings help shape you?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I feel like, in fact, here's an interesting story. I didn't pass for Mannings. Mannings was actually my third choice.
Wow. What was number one?
All right, so number one was actually Camden College, and I did pass for my first choice, but it just didn't seem what's the word? It wasn't reachable. Like, there were a lot of limitations and challenges in trying to secure a place, or difficulties in trying to secure a place to be able to stay and go to school there. And then the second choice was Monroe. But then as a kid, I remember, it's a bit silly now. But I remember saying to my mom, well, maybe, I remember saying to my mom, yeah, my friend, they're arguing with her in the yard saying, nah, you're not sending Nile to no all boys school. You know, I remember as a kid arguing that, and then eventually it was just like, all right, well, Mannings it is. And yeah, so I ended up there. And I think one of the main things is it gave me like a lot of freedom that I've come to understand like places like Campion don't necessarily give. So for example, even my pursuit of like the many subjects and so on, like that's something that I hear that Campion like kind of forces you to like narrow down from early and say, all right, these are the things you're focusing on. And so like I believe that Mannings allowed me to explore much more things or much more widely than another place would have. And in Mannings as well, I met a lot of people, like interacted with a lot of fellow students from like all this is obviously the background would have been much more diverse than like another school. Like so people from all walks of life and so on, like different perspectives, like different ambitions. And so it's like eventually more and more through learning who others were, like it definitely helped me to learn a bit more about who am I in this world, like where do I fit in all of this. So I think having that diversity in money is like definitely helped me to like really assess where I really wanted to go. And I remember particularly there were a set of ambitious young men. So I think I've named a few already. But like Javon Henry and Rajiv Badalu, I remember they were the ones who first mentioned to me the idea of placing and doing many subjects for the idea of being able to place or get a reward from CXC. And I remember they tried for that. I think they were a year or two ahead of me. And I was like, oh, is this a thing? And yeah, it's eventually something I tried for as well. And then there are many people more to follow that tried similar things, like Ilon Calvert and so on, like a lot of people. So it was like being around like a lot of ambitious people, and I think it's because especially when they're from a place where there are not necessarily many opportunities, it's like you kind of have to fight harder. You kind of have to dig and try to find those opportunities. And so being around those individuals, I think would have really helped shape things versus if I was somewhere else. I think I would have maybe just settled with um, just the bare minimum in a sense of speaking. But I think being around these individuals where we're all from a background where we didn't necessarily have the best start and we desire to change things in some shape or form. I think that really helped push me to like different heights that maybe wouldn't have been the case somewhere else.
Interesting, interesting. Hey, Nile, I really appreciate you taking the time out and chatting with me. It's been very, very, very interesting. I loved every minute of it, really. Thank you.
Yeah, man. It was an honor, man.
Respect. Thank you very much, Nile. Take it easy.
All right. Blessings.